Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Alan Ewing. I'm the Executive Director of CBRS Alliance. I want to welcome you to the latest in our series of webinars. Today we'll be talking about education as a vertical in particular. As you see the title here, we analyze the educational connectivity benefits. Go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping for us. By joining the webinar, you agree to the terms of the CBRS Alliance privacy policy and webinar disclosure located in the event description. We are recording this session. This will be available after the fact, as well as the presentations that are included here. So that will be available for you to share with your colleagues and other interested parties, and will be uploaded on the cbrsalliance.org website. Next slide. So a quick introduction of speakers. Myself, Alan Ewing, I'm the Executive Director of CBRS Alliance, and I've basically been part of the telecom industry for about 25 years now. It's pretty remarkable. The industry association, that's a little bit dated here, but we're today, as of today, 168 member companies. So that's pretty incredible. All of us, part of the Alliance, really dedicated to LTE and eventually 5G and R solutions in the band. So this is utilizing, of course, the CBRS shared spectrum band, and it's both for in-building and outdoor coverage. Today, we're very fortunate to have a really great lineup of speakers. I'm very fortunate to be able to introduce these folks to you. One of our speakers today, Melissa Ashurst, a VP of Healthcare and Higher Education from JMA Wireless. She is leading JMA's business and strategy for education and healthcare throughout the United States. And prior to JMA, she spent 10 years in the wireless industry with leadership positions as a national system integrator for distributed antenna systems, as well as AT&T in the Antenna Solutions Group, where she was Southeast Area Manager, contracts in business development, managing multi-million-dollar capital budgets. In these roles, she's been part of some of the most complex DAS projects serving the needs of college campuses, stadiums, large public venues, and brings a unique understanding of the carrier perspective, as well as the complexities of successful deployments. She resides in the Metro Atlanta area, where she sits on the board of directors for the Children's Center for Hope and Healing. Next slide. Our second speaker, Ray Sabarin from Nokia, Business Development and Private Networks for U.S. Enterprise. Ray is a proven business developer and sales leader with large technology corporation and startups. He has over 30 years experience and relationship building within the wireless and high-tech industries globally, as well as other industries and local businesses across the U.S. and Canada. Ray has sales experience in the web scale, energy, manufacturing, healthcare, and public sector verticals, as well as wireless service providers. His specialties include sales and marketing, business development, value-based selling, negotiations, internal marketing, account planning, business planning, strategic planning, customer presentations, investor presentations, seminars, and portfolio development and management. And then our other speaker today, we're very fortunate to have with us Mark Reynolds, Associate Director of IT from the University of New Mexico. Mark, Associate Director, University of New Mexico IT Department, is involved in the engineering, design, installation, and implementation of many voice, data, cellular, security, and video deployments, inside and outside plant infrastructure as well. Mark has been in higher education for 35 years with experience in telecommunications since 1973, 45 years in voice, data, security, facilities, RF, and management. Before joining the University of New Mexico in 2003, Mark served as the operations manager for the voice video security system and data networking, engineering, and design at New Mexico Tech in Sirocco, New Mexico for 20 years. He has over 45 years total experience in telecommunication space, with 37 of these years in higher education. So I'm going to be welcoming each of our speakers in turn here shortly. But to get us started on the next slide, give a quick overview of our agenda, welcome and introduction. We're in the process of finishing up right now. What is OnGo and CBRS? I will take care of that. and then connectivity challenges in education, how can OnGo help, how to get started, and then a Q&A session. And so our speakers will be speaking to these various issues, and then we will have a little bit of time for Q&A toward the end. I will help curate those. Next slide, Josh. So just another couple of pieces of housekeeping for us. We will address questions at the end of the webinar to ensure we have time to cover them, all the material as well as the questions. There is a questions tab that you will see in the control panel for OnGo webinar. You may submit your questions there, and based on that, I will work to curate your questions and deliver them to the speakers, and that way we can go through them fairly efficiently. Throughout the session, we will also be doing some polling this time to collect information from our attendees to make sure we're really understanding our audience's view on the subject matter. That'll help us understand, direct, and tune a little bit our discussion. Results will be shared live on the call, and at the end of the event, there will also be a 2-minute survey for you to give us feedback on your experience here and how we can look to improve future webinars. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of what is CBRS and OnGo. So just a brief history of CBRS. You see really the timeline starts in 2010, and this is the early days, really 2010 through 2014. The groundwork laid by NTIA and FCC regarding the proposal and rulemaking around the concept of the CBRS band. So all of that work done by the FCC led to the creation of the CBRS Alliance in mid-2016, which was really dedicated by a group of member companies that we still enjoy among our membership today, that is dedicated to the use of LTE and eventually now 5G and R in the spectrum that was identified as the CBRS band in the 3.5 gig region. We launched the OnGo brand name early in 2018, and then the specification development took place through 2018. 2019 is really where the approvals began to happen for the actual commercial deployments, with one of the highlights being the initial commercial deployment approval that we received from the FCC in the second half of 2019. And then finally, early this year, full commercial service was authorized by the FCC, and our work basically to support all of this effort with the latest version of specs to allow for 5G deployments in the band as well. The other major activity that's going to be taking place this year is the PAL auction, which will take place in July. Next slide. So again, under the brief history, spectrum sharing is codified under FCC Part 96. This is here how you will hear it referred to. If you want the details, it is in the CFRs, Title 47, Chapter 1, Volume 5, Part 96. Part 96 for simplicity. We are closely allied with our sister organization, the Wireless Innovation Forum, known as WIN Forum, and we work with them cooperatively to develop testing, certification, and other support efforts to make sure that CBRS band deployments are done well, there's interoperability, and that we are all respecting the requirements that make this band shared and valuable to us all. Next slide. So just a high-level picture. As mentioned, we are now at 168 member companies. This is we've been discussing whether to break this slide into 2 different slides now that it's become more and more of an eye chart, but it speaks well to what's happening. We've added 28 new member companies even this year. So during the COVID slowdown, et cetera, we've still been able to make great progress. So we're fortunate to have dedicated board members as well as a really fantastic group of member companies that are supporting this technology, bringing their joint expertise to the table. Next slide. High level, as mentioned, we have a relationship with Wireless Innovation Forum. Wireless Innovation Forum is really radio technology agnostic, but they're the ones that are developing the requirements or developing the rules around ensuring that Part 96 can be tested effectively. So they're doing the processes, requirements, et cetera, to make sure the incumbent users of the band are protected. CBRS Alliance is part of the equation, is really about evangelizing LTE and 5GNR in the band. So we are technology RAN specific for LTE in particular. And we are doing additional work to ensure coexistence, network service, et cetera, in the band in the context of building on top of the 3GPP specifications. Next slide. Very quickly, and not to belabor it, but just to give you a sense of the spectrum, 150 megahertz of shared spectrum in the mid-band is incredible. This, the old adage from the real estate world is location, 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 and we've got it. Not only that, we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the amount of spectrum. What you see here are the three tiers, starting at the top with the incumbents. And these are the folks that really had the rights to the spectrum before this concept came into being. So you see military, Department of Defense, the ship-based radars, ground-based radars, fixed satellite services, and the wireless internet service providers. When it comes to the shared spectrum for commercial purposes, there are two tiers. At the bottom, the general authorized access. This is the entire 150 megahertz of the band. If it is not being used for some other purpose, the GAA gets to utilize the spectrum for providing communication services in the shared rubric. And tier two, what you see is the PAL. The auction for the PALs will take place in July, as mentioned. This is essentially giving you a leg up in the prioritization table. So this gives you priority over the GAA. There will be 7 licenses per US county. And those will all take place. The auction will take place, as mentioned, at the end of July. Next slide. And just a couple of notes. Go ahead and a couple of notes. This has really been a joint effort between government and industry to make this happen. We've enjoyed an incredible relationship with NTIA, with the FCC, with the Department of Defense, and their commitment to this work and their encouragement, enthusiasm cannot be understated. So we've been very lucky to work with Chairman Pai, with key folks in Department of Defense, et cetera, and their willingness to really champion this has been part of our success. Next slide. So a little bit about the lingo, as mentioned, OnGo is about the LTE and eventually 5GNR deployments in the CBRS band. So we refer to OnGo as our brand name for the technology for LTE in the 3.5 CBRS band. CBRS Alliance, of course, is the organization, and CBRS is specifically tied to the language from the FCC. It's about the band. CBRS as a concept is technology agnostic. OnGo is LTE and 5GNR specific. Next slide. So moving on here, I believe we've got a poll coming up, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to discuss the connectivity challenges in education specifically today with our presenters. Next slide, Josh. So I appreciate if everybody would take a quick look at the poll. It'd be very useful if you would weigh in here. If you are a part of the higher education or the K through 12, or not specifically in the educational world, it'd be very helpful for you to help out and give us a sense of that. We'll leave this open for a few moments. I see a vast majority of you are not necessarily part of an educational institution, but still, a fair number are. So very good. So we'll our results, as you see here, 90% are saying no, We have a representation from higher ed, and we have representation from K through 12. Fantastic. That our speakers now will have to take that into consideration as they discuss things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray. Ray is going to take us through some interesting information from their perspective at Nokia. Ray, please take it away.
Thanks, Alan, and really excited about joining this panel. We can move to the next slide. When looking at the opportunity, 2020 is a really exciting year for those of us that are involved in enterprise connectivity and IoT, and CBRS is really the catalyst to provide enterprise the tools to be able to leverage and take advantage of new technologies and really help their operations, benefit students, faculty, staff at the universities and other campus environments. And as of 2020, we have full authorization, full commercialization of the OnGo service, which is fantastic. You can move to the next slide. When considering that CBRS OnGo is the catalyst from a connectivity standpoint, it now provides enterprise and universities or K through 12 institution the connectivity tools. Really, it's the IoT technology evolution that's also very exciting, because now the ability to deploy IoT sensors, devices, and applications and leverage the robustness of LTE, the technology, and do this in a controlled manner, and also, in some circumstances, some use cases, in an economic way. We are expecting a huge shift to occur within the higher ed and K through 12, and we've already seen it. That we're only in June, but we've always seen the demand and the interest accelerate significantly. You can move to the next slide. So when considering the higher education or K through 12 vertical or businesses, what are the key business drivers for the OnGo private LTE and the network investment that we'll be making? These are the ones that we've highlighted as the main ones: the secure data connectivity. So the increase in wireless IoT devices require the 3GPP LTE standards to address cybersecurity concerns that are, as more and more IoT devices and application and connectivity occurs, that puts more pressure on the IT departments and the CIOs to address cybersecurity concerns, and the CBRS OnGo LTE provides that. The high reliability demands on the wireless networks. There's more business critical devices and applications demand higher reliability. And again, there's more and more devices requiring more and more throughput and latency, and some of these use cases require the mobility as well. Cost-efficient wireless solutions to cover both indoor and outdoor campus. Some of these campuses are extremely large. They're almost the size of a city, small city, which requires a lot of deployment of APs. But private LTE and the CBRS band, the OnGo band, requires less APs for large deployments, less infrastructure, less power consumption and maintenance. We are also seeing more and more feedback about smart campus, smart classroom technology adaptation. Some of these technologies already exist, but have been challenged with connectivity issues. So the campus and classroom technologies are an integral part of the higher education recruitment efforts. And we actually believe COVID-19 will accelerate that. There's, we believe, a shift that's going to occur in higher education, and they're going to look at how to use smart campus, smart classroom technology to improve their service to their students and customers. And then the full mobility use cases. So we're seeing in the autonomous guided vehicles or robots, the semi or fully automated and remote control machines, ease of operational work with a private LTE system. You can go to the next slide. This next slide is a little bit of an eyesore, but really it captures the ongoing use cases, and we're not identifying every single use case here, but focusing on higher education and to some level the K through 12. These are the use cases we're talking to our customers about. These are the use cases the industry in general are tackling. So going from indoor and outdoor positioning, smart classrooms that I talked about before, using fixed wireless broadbands to bring broadband to student housing or other facilities where they may not have fiber. And really, we look at the private LTE CBRS OnGo as an extension of their IP network. So that, we call it cutting the wire. They have many use cases in areas as futuristic as drones, interactive smart boards and podiums, VR and AR for classrooms or remote learning, and really the reliable wireless connectivity required for automated vehicles. And we're also seeing big interest in the blue phones or the emergency booth, as many of these campuses and schools have emergency booths that were deployed many years ago using copper fixed line, and now they're looking for more advanced, more kiosk type dual video and voice communications. So again, this isn't all the use cases that we're seeing in higher education, but these are the ones that drive the most interest and have been in conversations with the universities. Next slide, please. The other one that's interesting is the digital stadium. And if you can just click through it, there's a little bit of graphics associated with the slide. But as most of us know, universities, some of them have some of the largest stadiums in the US, and private LTE CBRS OnGo provides them the capability of adding some of these use cases that may not be related to the way we think of it today, where the existing carriers have good coverage, let's say in a stadium, but they're to serve their customers. This allows the universities or schools, and I'm in Texas, some of the high schools here have some of the largest stadiums I've seen. This allows them for operational and commercial use to have their own private network and to deploy some of the use cases and serve these stadiums with digital applications that they can control. They can control the quality of service, they can control the throughput, they can control the coverage, and be able to bring these, some of them existing applications or services that they may use the Ethernet or Wi-Fi or the carriers, but also some of the new ones that we're working with and have deployed in some of the NFL stadiums. We're also seeing the universities very interested in these use cases. Some of them are on the top right of the slide, and you can go to the next slide. It actually talks about the use cases. So there's some that are really fun. I've been involved in some of them actually, and this is not just stadiums, also in racetracks. Nokia has done some work with Google and NASCAR, where you can do real-time or near real-time video streaming. We can have a scenario where you have cameras, wireless cameras at that, or in vehicles or on individuals, and we're working with a system integrator, a video system integrator called Radiant Images, that they do really cool type of camera stuff. You want to put a camera on a dolphin, you call Radiant Images, and they help the studios with that. But the other thing they've done is, in a sporting event, have these multiple cameras in vehicles or on individuals, and the fan experience, they can actually pick which video they want to be looking at in near real time. Adding some augmented reality, live virtual reality. We were involved in Dallas Cowboy draft day, where we had virtual reality capabilities, and you could be with Jerry Jones in the room as he picked the next Dallas Cowboy. And additionally, from an operational standpoint, they can use it for video analytics. Again, with Radiant Images, we're working on the director of the broadcast could use the private LTE system for video analytics, being able to select from the IP cameras that are connected wirelessly. And as well, we can do real-time tracking. We're working on the thermal camera, temperature detection systems, and adding additional functionality to it, such as video analytics, but also real-time tracking of individuals or objects within the stadium. So these are a lot of the new use cases that are now at the access of the universities and campuses and K through 12 schools for their stadiums. You can go to the next slide. And the other area that we've seen a significant amount of interest is in regards to using private LTE as the backhaul with a CPE or gateway to provide Wi-Fi broadband at home for students. This now allows a school ISD to deploy their own private network, provide broadband service to their students, and also leverage the private LTE for additional use cases. But this is a significant change we're seeing with COVID-19. I think there was a little bit of a surprise for many of the ISDs that a large percentage of their student base did not have high-speed internet. And in some of these counties, you would have thought, okay, in rural areas, but actually that's not the case in many of these suburban, even city scenarios. Many of their students, we heard as high as 62% in some of the counties around Dallas did not have high-speed internet. So the OnGo solution now, and with the introduction in this year of the spectrum being available, this provides an alternative for the schools and the ISDs to deploy their own private network. And I think I have one more slide and that's it. This is just an example of how you can leverage both technologies. And by the way, at Nokia, we believe each technology has its place. Ethernet, fiber, Wi-Fi, and private LTE OnGo all play a role in the deployment of new technologies. And this is an example of one where you would use the private LTE system to reach a home, and then using a Wi-Fi gateway, broadcast the Wi-Fi signal within the home. And it's a easy to deploy solutions. What we've focused on in Nokia in the enterprise space is not take the carrier's solutions that we sell to them, which are very complex technologies and complex network, but simplify the technology, leveraging the CBRS OnGo spectrum, but making a plug and play, simple for customers, both enterprise customers or individuals, to leverage having their own private LTE system. Next slide. And that's my time. Hopefully this was informative.
Ray, that was fantastic. Thank you. So now I get to introduce Melissa Ashurst, who is with JMA. Melissa, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. I am also very excited to be here. I think CBRS is just such a relevant topic throughout education right now for all of the reasons that Ray just covered. I'm really going to focus more on why higher education should be looking to OnGo as a solution to many of these issues. So you can go to the next slide. So I love this. I think it does a great job of depicting what we all would expect to have happen on a carrier network or even a Wi-Fi network, and the difference in what CBRS has to offer. So OnGo CBRS is part of an overall enterprise connection portfolio that has unique characteristics that are the best of Wi-Fi and cellular. Like an HOV lane, it is dedicated, controlled, and separate from other forms of connectivity that are either very open, making it difficult to control, or has a difficult business model to make it affordable for the enterprise use. CBRS is based on LTE and 5G technologies. There's a large ecosystem of devices, think cars, that support voice, video, data. Devices have a need for high capacity and very secure networks. CBRS is ideal for those services that are business or operationally critical. OnGo allows mobility for devices that increasingly need to be unwired, and it gives the ability to connect things that are too expensive or inexpensive and too expensive to wire. Most important, it provides ownership of the connection by the organization. That's unique from any other connection technology where Wi-Fi is used by all and cellular is controlled by a third party. Next slide. So, how do we enable higher education functions utilizing CBRS? The biggest thing is connectivity does not need to exist in isolation in order to offer value. Ultimately, it has to serve the complex functions of what could be at a university campus: smart healthcare, learning, buildings, utilities, transportations. It's literally a city. To achieve those outcomes, humans, controls, and sensors are connected, as shown by all the use cases Ray just went over, into one connectivity ecosystem that's shown on the right. That connectivity ecosystem will only scale and distribute as needed with a degree of automation and flexibility for the connectivity. The information and data collected is exchanged and transported back to an end system and services to create value and information as education digitizes their functions and capabilities, all shown on the left-hand side. OnGo is unique in that it supports not only the connectivity ecosystem for these functions, but it also brings with it the inherent and necessary attributes of security, privacy, adaptability, resiliency, and sustainability that are needed to bind with the digital competencies. Next slide. So, how do we keep flexibility for higher education with our deployment of OnGo? As was shared in the use cases, where OnGo can be deployed is very unique. It can cover everything from in-building to venues to campuses and to very remote locations. Technologies like Wi-Fi do really well in buildings, but they diminish in capability the larger the area and the longer the distance. Conversely, cellular does really well at covering large areas, but is often difficult to reach into buildings or to provide enough capacity for the venues and public locations. Due to the power levels and diversity of OnGo certified radios and CBRS capable devices, in-building locations as well as remote locations can connect across all of these domains using the same technology and infrastructure. While the technology used in OnGo is well established 3GPP, 4G, and 5G, the OnGo certified systems are new and they'll deploy in a more data center-centric model than legacy cellular technologies. Think more like a Wi-Fi enterprise. Not only is the coverage area diverse, but the services that can run over CBS can range from private, public, or both in multiple instances. It allows for the network service to be sliced on the same infrastructure. These core services offered with OnGo solutions are available in the cloud for on-premise or a hybrid, however best meets your organizational needs. Next slide. So I love this slide as well. I think it's very exciting. So how do we support multi-service private and public networks on one infrastructure? To further show an example of how CBRS OnGo systems can provide for all the use cases which might be running from different services, providers, or organizations within a campus, this diagram illustrates the full 150 megahertz of CBRS that's being assigned to red, green, and blue spectrum allocations from the SAS. When combined with different public and private core services, the OnGo radio access network of baseband and radios can distribute those multiple channels of spectrum as needed into network slices. Those slices can then service groups and types of devices and users with virtual networks for different solutions with complete mobility and with capacity and coverage needed, all within the control of the enterprise. This degree of control, segmentation, and service capability that will also interoperate with cellular and Wi-Fi networks allows for mobile connections that were not obtainable previously, particularly the ability to have multiple services and uses segmented over a large capacity network dedicated to one organization. As CBRS is a recognized cellular band, mobile service providers can offload, and they can also accomplish what's called carrier aggregation on the same infrastructure. Next slide. So what is next in higher education when we're looking at shared spectrum? OnGo is a shared spectrum technology, and it's just getting started. While today the focus and available solutions are with GAA and 4G, there is more to come. Some of the highlights include CBRS-A, which will be the first US mid-band spectrum to support 5G and will include the ability to do both 4G and 5G simultaneously in most solutions. This July, priority access licenses will be auctioned for up to 7 of the 15 available channels. This will bring new business models and services to the OnGo solution set, providing more opportunities to use an installed CBRS system to support multiple services on that same infrastructure. Both the SAS systems and radio access networks are supporting better coexistence, interference mitigation, and sharing algorithms to effectively provide the maximum amount of spectrum with incumbents and end users. Right now, there is tons of spectrum available for private and public network using CBRS, but we all know that with all connectivity, as more use cases materialize, that will diminish. Through the use of 5G, PALs, and coexistence, the capacity will be increased through efficient utilization. At the same time, the FCC, NTIA, and others are investigating additional spectrum bands that can use the same sharing model in future years. Next slide. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Melissa, thank you very much appreciated, and good information from our friends at GMA. I'm now very honored to introduce Mark Reynolds, who is with the University of New Mexico and brings his perspective to this, which I think is fairly critical. We've been talking about it from a vendor perspective. Now we're talking about it from the guy who has to live it. So Mark, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Ray and Melissa, for that good presentation on what CBRS value brings to higher education and any of the verticals. So let's go through the next slide, because I'm going to talk about the complexity of the university here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on Route 66. We're one of the Tier 1 institutions with 27,000 students and 5,000 faculty and staff. We have a University of Health Science and a university hospital with branch campuses around New Mexico. On this campus, we continue to have the approach from the carriers with macros, and so we have Verizon, we have a couple macros, AT&T, we have one, T-Mobile, we have 3, and then Sprint has one for the hospital. So we know that with students, when you come from your home environment to come to a university, there are expectations that you'll provide that connectivity and continuity that they expect in order to do classes and have their own way of communicating. Well, because of COVID and the university having to now take 27,000 students and have them have to tele-learning, as well as 5,000 faculty and staff, and have them telework, and how we're going to bring those back. Right now, I'm mandated by my C-level to look at what if we couldn't come back for 18 months, and that's a reality. So we also are doing a small cell right now with Verizon on putting our emergency phones, as Ray was talking about earlier, and we're also doing a project with AT&T to put some on light poles in order to bring some 5G technology to the campus that's driven by the carrier. We have about 4,000 access points across the university, and the hospital has their own. We have a disparate connection between what we provide for technology for data and the hospital, but voice is contiguous through the whole environment. I provide about 25,000 connections, so we're a city within a city, as was talked about earlier. Crown Castle, who came, we started looking at IDaaS back in 2006, and I'm still looking at it today because it's a hard sell on getting product into a building because of CapEx dollars and OpEx dollars and integrators and who you're going to rely on and where do you go day two when something breaks after you get it built. So the one that really was the lowest hanging fruit, of course, was our football and basketball stadium, as Alan was talking about. Ray was talking about, is that's where they saw a good return on their investment, and that investment dollars was given, was given back to the athletics. So the university didn't get anything back from that deal, but it showed that there was a need. And a little side story is when the NCAA came out, we did one venue here, and then they came out a second time, and they turned us down, not because we didn't have good cellular coverage, is because we didn't have good Wi-Fi coverage. So another good suggestion of CBRS, of this private LTE, is that could have been an option back in the day. So you know that that's going to be something that'll be looked at in the future as well. For IP hardwire connections, we have about 100,000 IP connections. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons I joined the coalition was because you hear about this technology and you're queried about what does it mean. So in order to find out the root of what OnGo and CBRS Alliance is, I joined. And anybody out there that's watching this, I encourage you to join if you want to stay abreast of what's going on in this environment and these frequencies, and the go-to market, and partner with or find out who you can partner with in order to look at this technology as an alternative to private LTE or Wi-Fi, or augment outdoor locations, etc. So that's why I joined. And I was honored to be asked to present on higher education, because we're in that quandary of IDaaS versus ODaaS versus what is CBRS bringing, small cell, etc. And then you have the buildings that the new technology, and I'm also on the TIA IoT committees that look at smart buildings and smart cities. So when you look at the buildings we have low E glass. So that low E glass starts to create that problem we all have, where you have poor coverage in a building, and then you put in the low E glass, and now you create another dynamic that creates more penetration problems. But the architects, the AIA groups, are getting smarter to work with the customers and saying, you can reduce your dial tone footprint and give you better cell coverage if you put in some type of system, as in a repeater system. So the architects are starting to put this into their drawings. Why do we do what we do? Is from the IoT perspective, is the reduction of the carbon footprint, emissions. So again, sensors that we want to put in. Like I said before, architects firms are suggesting public LTE in the new builds because they don't understand other technologies so far, and also the trade-off between Wi-Fi, public, and private LTE. So, and then when you get into IDaaS, or whether it's even CBRS, you have to have an integrator. You got to have someone that you can work with. Even talking back about how we integrate this, you have to have somebody either locally or close by that can help you integrate it and then support it. So challenges for IDaaS, and I'm going to talk about IDaaS because we are still embracing what CBRS brings, because it does have value. So if I just talk about the IDAS that I've been talking about since 2006, is CapEx and OpEx. Where do you find those dollars? Where do you find the support? How do you refresh this technology? How do you design it? How do you find an integrator? And can you sole source it, or do you have to have some type of contract? In higher education, you have to have some mechanism in order to buy. You can't just buy a $500,000 product and not go to bid. You have to have a way to do that. Next slide, please. So let's talk about CBRS and the things I've learned for being on the Alliance and having presentations and being part of the committees. These are things that CBRS can bring to higher education of private networks that, and we know that LTE, even public LTE, has a good secure network. Well, private LTE can also have that same security. So what are things you can use for this type of technology? One is emergency outdoor devices, which we talked about earlier. So you could take your phones or your devices that are IP and convert it with the chipset that allows you to talk CBRS frequencies and have that as your backbone that's not on your regular network, so that it can't be attacked. And we get attacked every day at the university, every minute, by denial of services or other type of denials, even external and internal. So our networks constantly get bombarded. These type of connections or CBRS keeps you in a private network that then eliminates, nothing's perfect, but it removes of having, if your phones go down or your network goes down, this type of connections can stay up and work for those critical connections. University buses, hospital buses, CCTV. So a lot of us, we have 400 cameras on this campus, all IP based, back to a hard device. What if we were to uplift those to a CBRS technology and not have them connected to the backbone? So if we had a network outage, which we had last Friday, and all the cameras were offline. So we had the riots that started. The police had no way to monitor the cameras. So now you have a life safety problem. So there's a good example of why using this type of technology can get you off of the same technology that you're using for all other type technology. Point of sale. When you go to venues, like at our basketball event, we use the same Wi-Fi or the same private LTE for the ticket scanners, and that competes with maybe the news media, that competes with the public, and you may not be able to scan people because you're competing with the same bandwidth. Another reason to do this. Athletic events, like I talked about. Life safety systems, there's many of them. Mass notification that you could put on this private network that won't be impacted by being attacked on the main network. Mobile voice. University events for outdoor connections. We have welcome back days where we set up a lot of Wi-Fi and hardwired connections to set out tents so that when students come back, they can see the different departments and how to interact and the different clubs, etc. If you had CBRS as a private connector, you could then not worry about the same problem with if the network went down, especially when school starts, which happens in a lot of environments where you have all the students coming back to work, coming back to school, all the people coming back to work. A lot of us don't ever leave, like me. And then you have something happen to the network that then causes that event to not be able to progress. It looks bad on the university. So another way to think about that. Campus police for two-way radio communications via into the bowels of the building, LMR. So today we have no BDA or LMR systems in our buildings. We're installing the first one, but when you start that takes off and you start to put that across multiple buildings, you have to now redesign it because you can't have LMR BDA systems on every building because they don't work well when you beat against each other. Another reason that this type of technology could suffice. Mass notification, just like I said. Next slide, please. So the private LTE versus CBRS, OnGo for higher education, challenges for CBRS that I continually look at, and I've met with different companies that are integrators, as well as being on the Alliance, is you have to understand the value and the return on this investment. At any university, in any vertical, how do you bring in a product and you have to get that return on investment? Why would you do it? And the migration of technology from IP to CBRS frequencies. You need the chipsets, you need a plan, you need to be able to migration, again, to sell that to your environment. CapEx and OpEx, no different than like IDAS, you have to have a way to fund it and refresh it. You need those integrators. Without those integrators, none of us are perfect RF engineers, even as long as I've been in the business. I'm a person of one. You need a mountain of people in order to integrate any technology and to be successful to implement in your environment. You need those, like I said, RF engineers, IT owners of the technology to migrate from and to. You need a project plan to migrate technology to CBRS from IP or public LTE or both. Buy-in from executive management, purchasing ownership of the product and process, and refresh. All of these things are something that is just repeating what I've done with private LTE, whether it's ODAS, IDAS, to the CBRS environment. You need the same type of rules and regulations and ROI in place in order to move this forward. But I do see a value, and I think if you are interested in doing this, I would look out and talk to Alan, see about joining the Alliance. It's a good consortium. They teach you a lot of stuff and keep you abreast of what's going on. And then reach out to integrators that do this. There's the ones that do it in the cloud. There's one that do it premise-based. There's a hybrid. At least look at it and see if it's something that can bring you value to this private network. Next slide, please. So how can OnGo help? And I've already talked a lot about it because I joined the consortium first because I thought there's value here, and it is. In order for that, they've actually interviewed me on some of the stuff that I do. We've had some webinars and seminars on what is it we do, and that's what came up with a lot of slides I talked about of things that would work well for us. I need to also keep interested in talking to integrators. I have to understand that return on investment. I have to understand the pros and cons of moving from CBRS from private LTE, because now you own it, or you may co-own it, and it may be by, with a hosted solution, you may have a return on investment where you only have a certain amount of money you put in versus having to holistically stand it up. You got to present on the higher education locations that are migrated to and migrating to the CBRS technologies and the reasons and why. Even if I wanted to put CBRS for the sprinkler systems at the university, why would I do that? Why would I move them from private LTE that they're paying to the carrier to move it to a public LTE that we now manage or manage in the cloud? Capital costs, operational costs, support, and where do the responsibilities start and stop for you as the owner with that CBRS technology, and having a knowledge base that you can know where to turn when you have symptomatic problems or you want to add more technologies to it, and where are your capacity issues, latency, etc. Next slide, please. All right, I think my time's done. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much. It's very good to have the practical, folks that are deploying this, your viewpoint as well, of course. It's critical, in fact. So I think we have another poll that we'd like to run by our participants real quickly. And so curious, what kind of connectivity use cases are you trying to solve in your organization or for your customers in the educational industry? So if you would please participate in that. Get a sense of where we are with that one. This is very interesting as it develops here. Give just another few moments for folks to respond. Okay, I think we've got a good stable measure here. So taking a look just very quickly, looks like the remote learning, the enhancing building campus mobility, security, and the improving connectivity for staff, management, and students are the ones in the lead there. It's very interesting. This will be good information for us to take back to the Alliance and for discussion there. So one thing I do want to make you aware of, we are coming up against our time. I think I can maybe squeeze in one question for our attendees or for our panelists. But I do want to make you aware there is a handout available in the handouts tab. And let me take a quick look here at the questions. I'm gonna blow up the window a little bit, and if all of our participants would come back on screen and fire up your audio, I'd be curious real quickly. Let's see here, try to find a good question for us.
I like the mask, Mark.
He's being safe, and that's what we should all be doing right now. So, so I think this one's an interesting one. Since the spectrum is shared, how do we know that CBRS can manage capacity in a stadium as large as 60 or 80,000 people? Are there any quality of service assurances in CBRS? And I suppose OnGo is the more particular point here. So open that up. Melissa, Ray, Mark?
Well, if I can, my view on that is one of the advantages of having a private network is the entity can also control what other companies can deploy a CBRS network. So if a university deploys its private network, another company wanting to deploy a private network in that facility would have to get their authorization.
Got it.
So I think just looking at the amount of spectrum that's becoming available. So you have 150 megahertz, which is not shy of what Verizon has in their portfolio. So I think that speaks volumes as to the volume and capacity that can be handled over that network.
Thanks, Melissa. Mark?
Yeah, and I think it depends on, like in our case where we have Crown Castle that has their anchor tenant was Verizon, and they brought on AT&T and T-Mobile, and ironically, different carriers jump on different venues depending on what they want to do for their return on investment. But CBRS is a good thing, like you were talking about, for remarketing or giving something fan value where they can see when the beer's available, when the hot dog's available, then there's specials for coupons, then there's, those are things that mean something for the fans' experience is important. And if you have a way to stay in touch and get people to where they need to get, it's just that on a university network, we're not allowed to advertise. Well, that's where you got in the days of OnGo, and they were able to, they like made deals where they could make with universities so they could advertise. So it is a mechanism where it's a private connection that could go on a different IP connection to the world and not be part of the university backbone. So you didn't create a mandate problem that you have for your own auditability of a university and advertising. So ticket office, all kinds of things that we could use that type of venue for.
Well, unfortunately, we're running up against our time. What I want to do is assure all the participants, if you did submit a question, I'll be working with our panelists to get those answered. We'll include that in the materials that we upload for this, the recording of the webinar, the slides, the handout, and also the responses to the questions. So we'll polish those up, get them all up there, and give us a chance to really think about them well and get a good polished answer for everyone. I want to thank this extraordinary group of people for participating today. Mark, Ray, Melissa, a fantastic job. I think the information provided today, the way you presented it, really insightful, and I hope our audience found it as interesting as I do. I do a lot of these webinars, and it's really easy to zone out. And this one, I have to say, I was pretty much sitting here, listening to every slide and every comment, because it was really well done on your part. So thank you for your help in that.
Thank you for the
want to thank all of our participants for showing up today. I hope you also found it interesting. The recordings will be available on the CBRSalliance.org website. And with the questions, we will work on getting those out there as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Please, everybody, be safe, stay healthy, stay well, and take care. Talk to you all soon. Bye now.